Welcome to this second session at the DARIAH Annual, this time online session, the second session on digital primitives. We had a great discussion in the first session, and I hope we'll continue this and maybe expand. We'll have three great papers, which will maybe show how sort of the concepts of the digital primitives are being pushed into new domains and discussions. So we will have Susan Schreibman and Costas Papadopoulos from Maastricht speaking to us about 3D scholarly editions, followed by Ivaylo Nachev from Balkan Studies and Center for Thracology from the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences, talking to us about how to work on project factories and urban fabrics, industrial heritage in Bulgaria. And we'll finish by a paper from the University of Zadar on virtual research environments for Zadar Glagolitics, sorry. So each presentation will have 10 minutes and we'll finish by a discussion. Questions and comments can be put in the chat during the presentation, so we'll return to that. So please, Susan and Costas, the floor is yours.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Marianne, and good afternoon, everybody. So we're planning to do this presentation together with Susan to share it, but I know that Susan has some technical issues, so I might do the whole presentation myself. So we're going to talk about 3D scholarly editions. So 3D visualization, despite its long tradition in human research, is still faced with skepticism and hesitation, not only because of the constant technological shifts and exigencies and the fragile ecosystem within which projects are being developed, but also due to their non-conventional nature that does not adhere to established academic practices and metrics. 3D scholarship in a way exists in a very fragmented information space. The original models are available to the individual or the team who worked on them. A version of the models, often downgraded, exists electronically, and only if technology allows. The materials that inform decisions and the knowledge generated from them is written about in conventional publication formats or never become available beyond the research team. So while interactive and when interactive 3D artifacts are included in online publications, mostly they function as illustrative figures without making visible the scholarship that has gone into their creation. So for example, the sources, the decision-making, the methodologies, and so forth. And the reproducibility of such models remains rather limited. Decisions, sources, variables stay mostly with the team, which means that their validity cannot be checked. And the whole process of creation, including both the decisions of the researcher, but also the technology itself, remains black boxed and therefore inaccessible to other audiences. So without a concerted undertaking, 3D is at the most risk of disappearing from the scholarly record, along, of course, with other ephemeral born digital data, for example, social media. And what is common in the projects that you see on this slide is that none of these are currently accessible as interactive virtual worlds that can be used as a form of, let's say, virtual museums, educational environments, or research laboratories. Therefore, we believe that there is value in framing 3D scholarship within a scholarly edition paradigm. So in other words, the critical representation of historic documents. And critical stands for all processes that engage in a critical and reflective way, and historic refers to documents that require an editor to make them speak clearly. So in scholarly editions, the objective of the textual critics' work is to provide a better understanding of the creation and historical transmission of the text and its variants. And this understanding may lead to the production of a critical edition containing a scholarly curated text. So we propose here that the 3D scholarly edition can act as both a theoretical framework as well as an infrastructure to support the affordances of three-dimensionality as a research tool and include robust contextual information, textual or multimodal, metadata, paradata in different forms. So 3D editions operate in a way as a forum for scholarly argument and critical debate, for scholars to test out and critique the intent and meaning of those who formed, who used, who acted within those historic objects or environments. So what we propose here is to see heritage 3D reconstructions as knowledge sites that provide a framework for 3D scholarship and the communication of the results of that scholarship within a single spatial and temporal environment that is immersive and multisensorial. And we don't want to create a confusion with what we call digital monographs, that they largely use narrative using 3D models as illustrative. For example, the Stanford digital monographs or Michigan University Press, the Gabi project, because the model of digital scholarly editions is annotative, utilizing the model itself to embed contextual information. So we'll do that in the form of a new digital infrastructure for 3D scholarship called Pure 3D that we will start developing from January and for 3 years in the Netherlands as a national infrastructure, building upon the existing infrastructure of DARIAH and working together with DANS, the Data Archiving and Network Services in the Netherlands. So in this presentation, we would like to explore and problematize the features of 3D infrastructure using the scholarly primitives that Answorth referred to in his talk 2 decades ago. So let's start with discovery. So in Answorth's talk, discovery is what we talk about as being most typical with web-based resources, finding online resources 24/7 without having to travel to archives or museums to engage with originals. And while that is also true of the infrastructure we'll develop, here discovery takes on additional attributes. So providing a spatially rich environment for discovering new meanings or insights about the artifacts or worlds that are not available to researchers when the objects are viewed in their analog form, be it that the objects are behind glass cases, depriving the researcher of the sensorial engagement, or they no longer exist in their entirety due to damage, the ravages of time, or other changes due to the objects or spaces being used differently. And we move to the next one, annotating. So in textual scholarship, there has been many decades of theories and methods to reveal editorial decisions to the reader. And one of these is annotation. And this has also been the case with 3D, manifested in digital annotations, parameterization, alternative reconstructions, color coding, different levels of transparency, quantifications of uncertainty, and so forth. And these are all included or will be included in our Pure 3D prototypes. But specifically for annotation, we would argue that it needs to take advantage of the affordances of the medium to be truly effective in providing access to the creation process, background information about the world being modeled, and alternative versions of the reconstruction. So digital scholarly editions have opened up new modalities for annotation to include, in addition to text, audio, video, images, and data linked from other sources. Answorth argued that comparison is one of the most basic scholarly operations, as scholars in many different disciplines, working with many different kinds of materials, want to compare several objects of analysis. In 3D scholarly editions, the three-dimensionality of the modeled objects or spaces allow rotating views, interactive close-ups, the examination of the small details such as textures and technological processes. And such three-dimensional renderings that are often limited to the privileged researcher with direct access to the material provide the opportunity to observe the artifacts or spaces from viewpoints that would not be normally depicted in conventional modes of illustration. And as such, both researchers and the lay public can gain an embodied knowledge which is not possible through static monochromatic renderings, not even by pure scholarly textual descriptions. And for referring, we already touched upon in our introduction, 3D scholarly editions essentially act as mediators and gatherings of evidence and decision-making, be it textual, social, or historical within a multimodal infrastructure. And as knowledge sites, they encompass within the same computational paradigm, both the primary text, so essentially the 3D, and the evidence that informed the decisions in creating the text, therefore providing the community which it serves a tool for playing problems apart and opening up a new space for the extension of learning. Sampling could be said to be a ubiquitous activity within visual scholarship. It is one of the core features in image processing software in which we sample, for example, a color from an image to apply to another image. And in 3D reconstructions, we also use sampling to build out fragments of extant artifacts or to reconstruct buildings from extant foundation stones. And we would also call sampling the process of reconstruction by looking at evidence in different forms, for example, film notes, drawings, an image, and so forth, that depict a moment in the life of an object or a space. Essentially, what we do with sampling is that we select a subset of representative characteristics or features or evidence to reconstruct a larger whole. And moving to the last two ones, illustrating, 3D reconstructions illustrate arguments. And indeed, one could argue that they are arguments in and of themselves. 3D reconstructions are surrogates, both temporally and physically. In converting the analog to the digital, they exist within new spatialities. So 3D editions operate as a forum for scholarly argument and critical debate for scholars to test out and critique the intent and meaning of those who formed or who used or acted within these environments. So the last one, and Answorth mentions that representing, along with referring, is one of the true primitives, since each of these is in some way involved in all the others. And this is also true in 3D scholarly editions. And we utilize the term representing with re in brackets, as opposed to representing as a full word, to signify the theoretical nature of the research being undertaken in 3D scholarly editions, reinforcing the hypothetical nature of the models created that provide opportunities for experimentation and new insights without trying to bring something back to its original state, as the term often implies. In reconstructions, our interpretations are formed and negotiated through a series of biases and perceptual leaps due to the different spatial, temporal, and cultural contexts that contributed to the formation of these past lifeways, structures, and objects. So, building on the conventions of text-based scholarly editions, Pure 3D will provide tools essentially to integrate multiple types of sources and source materials, including annotations, images, video, structured and unstructured data, and also document the creation process, the paradata, in other words, providing users with direct access to the modeling and interpretative choices, therefore creating a multimodal resource impossible to replicate in print form. So the infrastructure will address the challenges of long-term preservation and access by archiving models in collaboration with DANS and making associated data fair. And finally, it will open new pathways for 3D publication, aligning with the declaration in research assessment, a recent initiative that calls for recognizing atypical scholarship. So thank you.
Thank you, Costas. I'm sure that we'll have ample opportunity to discuss this really intriguing paper. Now I would like to give the floor to Ivaylo who's going to give us a paper on reassessing scholarly primitives through experience from project factories and urban fabrics in Bulgaria.
Hello to everyone. Now I share my screen. I want to share some thoughts with you on a specific project we are working in with colleagues here in Sofia, Bulgaria. Project dealing with industrial heritage, also urban history and economic history. A bit more background to our initial idea. So our current project is based on a previous one, which was focusing on the 20th century industrial sites in Sofia, Bulgaria, the first half of the 20th century. This project, which we finished a couple of years ago, resulted in a print album that included many visual materials. And we published this album online, and one important item in our work is open access publication of all the materials. So we are going to do this with our current projects as well. Later, we decided to go further into this subject and to expand the project on a wider geographical scope with various industrial sites across the country, because the first one was focused only on the capital city of Sofia, and something which we want to develop a bit more is focus on digital presentation and digital presentation of all our results. And speaking about scholarly primitives, I was thinking that 20 years later, not so much has changed. Maybe the technologies make possible to present different types of data and bigger amounts of data, but I think the scholarly primitives more or less remain unchanged. And a bit more about our idea, I go a bit further in the past. Actually, this was probably one of the first things which caught our attention. You see a picture of the current state of one of the biggest factories in Sofia, which was very a core one for the Bulgarian industry. Actually, this site has the highest level of protection as a cultural monument and a historical monument. It was granted more than it was granted decades ago, but you see, nevertheless, despite this special status as a cultural monument and all the protection it should have, the building is in a very bad state. It's owned by a private company, and actually what they actually wait until it falls down. And I guess the idea is to build a shopping center or something else. So I think our effort is part of wider movement to find ways to protect this kind of monuments and to find suitable solutions for their use in our days. Here another picture of the site. 120 years ago, it was one of the most important places for Bulgarian industry. It had own railway track, neighborhoods developed around it. So it was very important for the the development of the whole city for a quite long period. Some more about the activities of the current project. So we focus on archival documents and on archival data, and our idea is to find, select, collect, annotate, and digitize a wide array of original documents related to industrial sites in the country. Actually, we wanted to, last year before the COVID crisis, we were planning to focus on 3 places in the country, namely Plovdiv, Gabrovo, and the capital. But due to the current state and all of the difficulties with travel and all of the restrictions, we are pretty much constrained. So we are working with a bit of delay. We are researching both the individual development of various factories and their overall impact on the respective cities. In addition, we investigate the current state of the objects and the sites, and we were working on methodology for processing all of the materials. Here I can show a scheme, a very basic scheme of what is our conception. So step 1 is the initial research of the archival documents, and we have some developments in the last year. First, we were focusing on the documents originating in the factories themselves. Bulgarian's archives are organized in that way that many factories have individual collections, but we found out that actually on other places there is interesting information which could be found, and namely very interesting materials could be found in municipal collections, where one can get the wider picture of the factory and all the areas around it. So, for instance, policies for granting plots, policies for reducing pollution, and so on. Our second step is research at the sites, different sites, and documenting the current state. Step 3 is digitalization of the materials and creating data sets. And fourth step will be inserting that information in interactive maps. And we have also another ideas. I will go back to this in a second. Some of the goals of our project. Our aim is to expand knowledge on urban and economic history and on industrial heritage protection. Our second goal is popularization in wider circles and rising overall awareness of the meaning of these objects as objects of cultural heritage. Third one is consolidating a network of researchers and educators in that field. And something I forget, and maybe now is the moment to say it about our team. We are working in a small team of 3 people. Me, Associate Professor Mira Markova from Sofia University, and PhD Zurnica Velinova, also graduated from the Sofia University. So we are a small team with 3 people, and we were the same team in the previous project. The last point here is we want to make a possible recommendation for new uses of certain factories, including giving examples of good practices in other countries. And at the end, let's see the time. Some more about two projects we are working on, 2 options for showing our results. The first one is interactive digital map, and we want to include here as many as possible objects, but this is a good way, and I think it's a very good way to show the meaning of the location of the different sites and factories. It's also a good option to include various original documents pinned to the let's say to the icon of the factory, including visual material like pictures, but also more sophisticated and more wider documents. And I think this is something which could be ready earlier. Actually, when in the beginning of the year, when I heard about the conference, I expected that I would be able to show already something working, but this was a difficult year with many unexpected occurrences. So unfortunately, it is still not done. And a second option, a second project we are thinking of is making mobile app with augmented reality for specific, let's say, the example I showed in the beginning. I think this is a good option for the big sugar factory in Sofia, which is already in ruins, and making a product like this, I think it could impact significantly the wider circles in society, and maybe changed attitudes towards this factory. And I think this is it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ivaylo. It was hugely interesting, also pointing to the wider perspectives of a project on industrial heritage. So I'll give the floor now to Mariana, Martina, and Laura from the University of Zadar, who's going to speak on scholarly primitives in the field of Glagolitic script. Please.
Yes, good afternoon from Zadar. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, you were struggling with the word Glagolitic, so I feel privileged to let you know maybe what kind of script it is. Hello to everybody from Zadar. Me and my colleagues will present you our research, which is nested in the project called, shortly called, please next, Laura, shortly called the Written Heritage Project. The main aim of this project is to digitize to digitize Glagolitic heritage, namely Glagolitic manuscripts, and to build databases and enable gathering and research of structured heritage data, which will help researchers, scholars from humanities to research those documents. Next, please. The goal of this presentation is to demonstrate the first phase of designing virtual research environment within this project. Namely, it is to research the usual research practices of scholars researching Zadar Glagolitic script and the whole culture around it. To design where we had to map those practices to a set of scholarly primitives, and with the aim to define the set of tasks which we have to transfer to Where in order to help rather maybe conservative Glagolitic research community to start to use new digital methods in their research of Glagolitic script. Next, please. So now to tell just a few things about medieval Croatia, we had 3 scripts and 3 languages which were simultaneously used, and we are mostly proud on Glagolitic script, which is here on the first picture. It is a script that was used in other countries too, but some special forms were gained in Croatia. We are very proud on it. It has lots of identity symbols in it, but also it is a resource for research of lots of sciences like linguistics, history, culture, and other scientists. Please next. Within our project, we have several research groups whose aim is to digitize and to enable access to those Glagolitic documents, but also to build databases and to enable gathering of those data. One of the most important group in the context of a virtual research environment is this working group on informatics support and building of a virtual research environment, which is strongly connected with the group for digital humanities. Okay, thanks. Next. So now my colleague Laura will proceed from this moment.
Thank you, Professor Tomić. So before I even start the story about virtual research environment in our project and about scholarly primitives, it is important to emphasize the changing pattern of science and scientific collaboration. Science became increasingly global and networked today, and the environment in which scientific research takes place is changing. And that particularly influenced humanists and their research process. Before building a virtual research environment, we need to scope the needs of humanities researchers and understand the needs of the humanities community we're trying to serve. The first phase of designing a virtual research environment refers to research of usual research practices of scholars in the terms of scholarly primitives. When we say defining the set of scholarly primitives, we mean to investigate and develop infrastructure and tools for supporting and enhancing research practicing, as also address different aspects of the research lifecycle in the humanities. Palmer defined 5 scholarly primitives, which were re-examined by Blank and Hedge. They added primitives particular to digital research in the humanities. The scholarly primitives, blank defined, are discovering, collecting, comparing, delivering, and collaborating. So for the purpose of our study, we actually wanted to find out which of those already defined set of scholarly primitives are applicable to our project and for our scientists. One of the project goals was to coordinate the interdisciplinary cross-institutional research of Glagolitic script and culture by providing virtual research environment, namely digital scholarly platform for research of Glagolitic script of Zadar provenance. So our goal was to analyze project virtual research environment to see which of those previously mentioned scholarly primitives are applicable and which tasks can be transferred into virtual research environment of written heritage project. So the first scholarly primitives that can be transferred to our virtual research environment is definitely discovering, which includes searching, but also browsing and other more advanced techniques for finding out about something. It refers to supporting several search and browse services. Can researchers perform a text-centric search across any collection, and can they filter and select from those collections? On the Written Heritage portal, scientists have the opportunity to search two catalogs according to the metadata with which the manuscript and watermarks are described. But when they find the particular manuscript through its description, they also have the option of browsing by place, which allows them to view all manuscripts originating from the selected place. And they can also browse manuscript by form and genre. In addition, there is also a filtering option on the portal. Scientists who is searching the catalog can filter by type of material, by place of origin, and by institution. In this way, they can actually discover new manuscripts that might be useful for their research. The next scholarly primitive is comparing. It refers to comparison of the data in the humanities by enabling the user to compare resources and describe the relationship between data sets. Through the Written Heritage portal, efforts were made to integrate a catalog of watermarks and a catalog of manuscripts. The integration of watermarks and manuscript databases is done to enable humanists to actually interpret and contextualize structured manuscript data. Here you can see a picture of a manuscript record, and at the very end, in the red square, you can see a watermark that this manuscript contains. In this case, here are two watermarks, and there is actually a link to that watermark in this description. On this next picture, we can actually see the watermark from the manuscript whose record we just saw. We can see all the metadata, but we can also see a link to the place where the manuscript in which the watermark was found originates, and we can also see a link to a manuscript which is containing this watermark. With this integration, we actually offer researchers greater research potential by enabling them to compare watermarks from different places and manuscripts, and to compare the structure of the manuscripts in which watermarks are contained. And we also actually enable visualization of structured data, as you can see in this photo. The last scholarly primitive that is planned to be applied into our virtual research environment is definitely collaborating, which enables scientists to work collaboratively on documents. This is actually a scholarly primitive that is planned to be implemented in the project, and for the needs of the project, an attempt will be made to find the most widely used tool for transcribing Glagolitic manuscripts in which scholars can transliterate text, they can communicate, and they can comment together. This is a table which actually emphasizes all those primitives that I just mentioned and all those activities on Written Heritage Project Virtual Research Environment. And to conclude, I would like to say that the scholarly primitives that were mentioned in this presentation are quite generic and applicable to research in general. There is definitely a need for a further research, especially for researchers in the field of research in glagolitism. We need to provide a whole life cycle research environment for communities in this domain, and we definitely need to provide research tools which are aligned with the needs of scholars in the field of research in glagolitism. Thank you for your attention.